We had a discussion, and there hasn't been as much change as I expected, but we are continuing to have some discussions tomorrow morning to explore some of the technical issues surrounding it. And the meeting was useful, but inconclusive.
Is the Prime Minister accepting some of what were your red lines on a customs union, for example? Well,
we discussed this at some length, and I put forward the view from the Labour Party that we want to achieve a customs union with the European Union. We want to have access to the market, and in particular we discussed the dynamic regulatory alignment, that is guaranteed European regulation as a minimum on particularly environment as well as consumer and employment rights. So we did have a discussion about all of that, and this will continue tomorrow at a technical level.
When you looked into the Prime Minister's eyes, was she serious about doing a cross-party deal?
She invited us to the meeting, and I accepted the meeting to go there to set out our views. She did put out the government's view, but the whole thing seems to depend on accepting the withdrawal agreement as put forward at the present time in a legislative form. Clearly that has to be taken together with the future political arrangements declaration, and we did spend some time discussing that and explored some issues around future trade agreements.
Did you or your side raise the issue of your party's policy on a public vote?
Yes, we did. It was raised by me at the beginning of the meeting and said, look, this is a policy of our party that we would want to pursue the option of a public vote to prevent crashing out or prevent leaving on a bad deal. There was no agreement reached on that. We just put it there as one of the issues that the Labour Party conference voted on last year.
And therefore, are you open, is the government open to the idea of an extension that is longer than just May the 22nd, that could involve European parliamentary elections?
If it goes beyond the 22nd of May, then clearly it does involve European elections, which the government absolutely does not want to be involved in. They made that very, very clear. The Prime Minister has made that clear in the House as well as in meetings with me, and that is why she is very keen to get a vote through the House next week in order to get an agreement with the EU, which will mean that Britain does not have to take part in the EU elections.
The Shadow Foreign Secretary Emily Thornberry appears to have written to the Shadow Cabinet and said that the referendum issue must be on the table, that you shouldn't accept a deal with the Prime Minister without that being on the table. Is it a red line for you?
Well, there was no deal offered, and there's no deal being offered by us either. We just discussed where we're at, and she reiterated where she is at the present time, and so red lines in the future didn't come up.
You obviously were in the House for that drama of the tied vote. There is a consequence to that, which means that the only indicative vote process that might now happen is if these talks don't succeed. Do you want to see indicative votes on Monday?
I want to see the House make a decision, hopefully in the direction that I would want, which is customs union and protection of rights as well as access to trade. Of course I want to see that. We'll put forward our views again. It won't be the same kind of indicative vote process as last time, because this will be part of, we assume, government legislation, but there's an awful lot of talking to do before we reach that position.
What's your general assessment of the mood here, of the extraordinary things are happening, tied votes, government resignations, taking control of the order paper, backbenchers? I mean, this is...
Well, when the history of British Parliament is written, this will be a remarkable period, a remarkable week. Fascinating in that sense. But take the thing back a bit. This is a totally ridiculous process we've got ourselves into. The government started the negotiations with the EU more than 2.5 years ago. They didn't consult anybody, they didn't involve anybody, they didn't take any soundings from the House, they just steamed ahead with it and indeed produced legislation which Henry VIII would have been proud of. That was clawed back by us, by the opposition, which got meaningful votes, and we're now in a position where at least we're having meaningful votes. We should have had the meaningful vote in December. That was delayed, and it's now been defeated 3 times. I want the government to understand that the House does not support the deal that she's agreed. She's got to come up, even at this very late stage, with something that is acceptable to the House, which does move in the direction that I've said that the Labour Party wants in order to reach an agreement with the EU. The dangers of crashing out with no deal are very, very serious indeed, and they have to be avoided.
I just must quickly ask about this video. I don't know if you've seen this video of the paras in Kabul and the shooting range and the picture of yourself. Have you seen it? What was your reaction to that?
I'm shocked, obviously, that this sort of thing has happened. I hope the Ministry of Defence will conduct an inquiry into it and find out what was going on and who did that. But I have to say this, House of Commons today heard from Rosie Cooper MP, who's been under a death threat for some time. She has been very brave and has carried on with her life as best she could, and she's been supported by the local police and local community in Lancashire. And finally, the person who was threatening her has been convicted. The Speaker made a very strong statement that we cannot have violent intimidation in our society. We cannot give way to threats from racists and the far right. We have to stand for decency in society, not for violence on the streets or indeed anywhere else. He made a very strong statement on that, and I urge people to reflect very carefully on that. Yes, people have disagreements, and yes, they have divisions. Conduct those divisions and disagreements in a respectful way. Don't descend into something ugly and violent.
Thank you very much.